Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. Congresswoman, thanks for joining me once again.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
It is good to be with you. If a funding deal doesn't pass today, the government will shut down after the clock strikes midnight. Republicans are blaming Democrats for the shutdown, and vice versa. Democrats are blaming Republicans for the shutdown. But I just want to ask you point blank, is the government going to shut down by this time tomorrow?
Well, this is the reason why the Democrats are at fault here. House Republicans did pass legislation to keep the government open. This was a clean continuation of existing funding that Democrats had previously embraced multiple times. In this case, only one Democrat joined us on September 19th to extend the existing government funding levels. It did pass the House, went over to the Senate, and in the Senate, as you know, you need 60 votes to pass a funding bill. That means with only 53 Republican senators, we need 7 Democrats to join Republicans. Now, they actually voted against it, but what's really troubling, and the real question is, why did they do this? Because they previously voted for this exact same bill, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times, right? Schumer actually negotiated these funding levels in 2024 and then subsequently voted to continue the levels in similar CRs as the one we're talking about right now, 3 subsequent times. And so the question is, why won't Chuck Schumer and the Democrats vote for the same bill that they previously voted for 4 times to avert this government shutdown?
Well, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said that he wants things like an extension of Obamacare subsidies, and he blamed President Trump for the shutdown, and this is what he posted in part. Americans are facing a crisis of rising healthcare costs. If the government shuts down, it's because Republicans would rather shut it down rather than help people afford healthcare. What's your response to that?
Well, see, I'm glad you're admitting that the Democrats, and you're clarifying for the people, rather, that the Democrats are using this to try to get other unrelated things in here. Now, the Democrats are the ones that set the sunset date for the end of this year for those insurance company subsidies. Those are not subsidies that go to the American people. Those are subsidies that go to insurance companies. These subsidies were provided to those insurance companies during the height of COVID. And once again, it was the Democrats who set the expiration date for the end of this year. That has nothing to do with keeping our government fully funded and open for the next 7 weeks, as our continuing resolution would do. So, what Schumer's doing here is admitting that he's trying to muddy the waters, use leverage to get other unrelated policy issues into a funding mechanism. And he's willing to risk our military not being paid, our agencies not being able to serve the communities, and other things to try to get something that is unrelated and doesn't expire until the end of the year. And by the way, they set the date for that expiration. The Republicans did it.
Congresswoman, I don't need to tell you, so many Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And if I'm a government worker, if I'm a service member serving our country, and I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and I hear that the government's going to shut down and my paychecks aren't coming to me anymore, I don't really care who's at fault. What I want is, I want to be paid. I want my money for a roof over my head, to buy food for my family, things like that, just to continue life. I mean, what do you say to those people?
I think this is why I've worked in the past in a bipartisan way to ensure that we did not shut down. We've been through this multiple times where we were so close to shutdowns, and we averted them because Republicans and Democrats came together. In this case, unfortunately, the Democrats are not willing to come together to pass a clean extension of existing funding levels. So, I can only control my vote, and our conference can control what we do. We voted to keep the government open. These service members should speak to their representative who voted to shut down the government and withhold their pay if their representative did not do so. But this is one of those issues where people are going to have to hold their representatives accountable if they were unwilling to do the common sense, responsible thing and just continue funding the government at the existing levels, again, that most of them previously supported. So that's the real, I think, puzzling thing for people to wrap their head around, is why would they choose to shut down our government, hurt our military service members, which are trying to provide for their families, make sure and ensure that our government agencies are working properly to be able to serve the people. This is, I think, it's in a very unfortunate circumstance, but it's clearly being dictated by politics. When you see that the Democrats again embrace this same language, same bill 4 times, but for some reason they won't do it now.
You, in 2021, along with 13 Republicans, voted for Biden's Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and that was when 6 Democrats voted against it. Are you bringing up that show of bipartisanship in conversations with Democrats? Are you trying to lobby Democrats now? I mean, what do those conversations look like across the aisle right now?
Look, I'm a proud member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is made up of Republican and Democrats that pride themselves in wanting to come together to prevent situations like this and to ensure that we're putting forward and adopting solutions that make sense. I think people right now are very frustrated with this pendulum that went all the way to the left during the Biden administration: complete open borders, reckless spending, record inflation, and now we're seeing the pendulum swinging back. I don't think people want to see that pendulum go all the way to the right. I think they want to see it settle somewhere in the middle. And I consider myself, a centrist. I'll work with anybody who is going to do the right thing by the American people. In this situation, unfortunately, only one of those Democrats in the Problem Solvers Caucus voted with us to keep the government funded at its current levels. So that is unfortunate. When the tables are turned now, we don't see that same type of cooperation. But regardless, I think right now my job is to explain to the American people why we're in this situation. We are in this situation because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in the Senate will not provide the 7 votes needed, so the Senate has the 60 votes to pass this clean funding bill. And the real question I have is, why won't they do it? Because they did it 3 times before, after passing this bill originally in September 2024. So the question is, why won't they do it? It makes absolute no sense to me, and I think probably to most people.
The Office of Management and Budget is preparing for mass firings, reportedly, of federal workers should the government shut down. And this goes beyond just the typical temporary furlough of government workers. What do you think of that threat? Do you think it goes too far, or are you supportive of that idea?
Well, look, we have to see all this on a case-by-case basis and what the justification is. What we do know is that the executive branch will be more empowered to be making decisions unilaterally as a result during a shutdown. And so if the Democrats' real goal here was to rein in the administration, they're actually going to have the opposite effect, because during a shutdown, the executive branch is more empowered. So that's another thing that would be puzzling, I think, to the average American person who's watching this, saying, gee, this doesn't really make sense. They say they want to hold the administration accountable, yet they're doing something that will have the adverse effect.
Congresswoman, I'm not one to make predictions here, but it seems like both sides, as of now, as of when you and I sit here, are pretty entrenched, and it doesn't seem like a compromise is going to be met. But, I mean, the government can't be shut down forever. Someone's going to have to buckle. Is there any indication, based on your conversations as a member of Congress, of who that's going to be?
Look, I think, again, it's going to be harder to get out of the shutdown. It's a lot easier for us to just continue the existing funding level. It's bipartisan. It's passed multiple times in the past with bipartisan support. I think the reason why the Democrats want to do this is to, again, create this type of chaos. They're taking their advice from left-wing outside groups that, Chuck Schumer did do the right thing last time. As did Hakeem Jeffries, in voting to continue the current levels of funding. And they got a lot of heat from these left-wing radical groups. So now they're kowtowing to those groups instead of doing what is the right thing for the American people. We need to put people above politics here, and they just won't do it. And I think that once we're in a shutdown, I think it makes it a lot more difficult to get out of a shutdown, particularly with the polarization that this has created. And it's already very difficult to get things done in Congress with the current breakdown of Republicans to Democrats. This will make it more difficult. So perhaps this is and will be an opportunity for the problem solvers to come together to get us out of this mess. But right now, between now and midnight, I'm doing my best to stop this mess from happening to begin with.
And I can only imagine how busy you are. But my last question to you is, I think something that outrages a lot of Americans on both sides of the aisle is that during a shutdown, members of our military do not get paid. Members of Congress, however, do get paid. Republican and Democratic lawmakers have said that they would defer their paycheck if the government shuts down. Is that something you support?
Look, I think withholding paychecks, if our staff members are not being paid either, then that should be across the board. I don't think it should be different for members of Congress. I think the difference is that this is constitutionally required. So that would be it. But I think that if we're able to have it withheld until the shutdown is over, then that should be the case.
Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, I always appreciate our conversations. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.